Little Red Hen. Once upon a time, a little red hen lived in a barnyard. She spent almost all of her time walking about the barnyard in her pickety fashion, scratching everywhere for worms. She dearly loved fat, delicious worms and felt they were absolutely necessary to the health of their children. As often as she found a worm, she would call chuck, chuck, chuck to her chickies. A cat usually napped lazy in the barn door, not even bothering herself to scare the rats, who ran here and there as he pleased. And as for the pig who lived in the sty, he did not care about what happened so long as he could eat and grow fat. One day the little red hen found a seed. It was a wheat seed, but the little red hen was so accustomed to bugs and worms that she supposed this is to be some new and perhaps very delicious kind of meat. She bit it gently and found that it resembled a worm in no way whatsoever as to taste, although because it was long and slender, a little red hen might easily be fooled by its appearance. Carrying it about, she made many inquiries as to what it might be. She found it was a wheat seed, and that if planted, it would grow up, and when upright, it could be made into flour and then into bread. When she discovered that she knew it ought to be planted, she was so busy hunting for food for herself and her family that naturally she thought she ought not to take time to plant it. What does ought mean? So she thought of the pig upon whom time must hang heavily, and of the cat who had nothing to do, and of the great fat rat with his idle hours, and she called loudly, "Who will plant the seed?" But the pig said, "Not I," and the cat said, "Not I," and the rat said, "Not I." "Well then," said the little red hen, "I will," and she did. Then she went on with her daily duties through the long summer days, scratching for worms and feeding her chicks. While the pig grew fat, and the cat grew fat, and the rat grew fat, and the wheat grew tall and ready for harvest. So one day the little red hen changed to notice how large the wheat was, and thus the grain was ripe. So she ran about calling briskly, "Who will cut the wheat?" The pig said, "Not I." The cat said, "Not I," and the rat said, "Not I." "Well then," said the little red hen, "I will," and she did. Oh, and she did. She got the sickle from among the farmer's tools in the barn and proceeded to cut off all the big plants of wheat. How does a chicken hold a farmer's tool? On the ground lay the nicely cut wheat, ready to be gathered and dressed. But the newest and yellowest and downest of Mrs. Hen's chicks set up a peeping in the most vigorous fashion, proclaiming to the world at large, but most particular to their mother, that she was neglecting them. What does neglecting mean? Poor little red hen, she felt quite bewildered and hardly knew where to turn. Her attention was sorely divided between her duty to her children and her duty to the weeds, for which she felt responsible. So again, in a very hopeful tone, she called out, "Who will dress the weeds?" But the pig with a grunt said, "Not I." And the cat with a meow said, "Not I." And the rat with a squeak said, "Not I." So the little hen looked. It must be admitted, rather discouraged, said, "Well, I will." Then, and she did. Of course, she had to feed her babies first, though, and when she had gotten them all to sleep for their afternoon nap, she went out and dressed the wheat. Then she called out, "Who will carry the wheat to the mill to be ground?" Turning their backs with snippy glee. That pig said, "Not I," and that cat said, "Not I," and that rat said, "Not I." So the good little red hen could do nothing but say, "I will then," and she did. Carrying the sack of wheat, she trudged off to the distant mill. There she ordered the wheat ground into beautiful white flour. When the miller brought her the flour, she walked slowly back with all the way to her own barnyard in her own pickety feet. She even managed, in spite of her own load, to catch a nice juicy worm now and then, and had one left for the babies when she reached them. Those cunning little fluffballs were so glad to see their mother for the first time. They really appreciated her. After this really strenuous day, Mrs. Hen retired to her slumbers earlier than usual indeed. Before the colors came into the sky to her lid, the setting of the sun, her usual bedtime hour. She could have liked to sleep late in the morning, but her chicks, joining in the morning chores of the hen yard, drove away all hopes of just such a luxury. Even as she sleepily half opened with one eye, the thought came to her that today that sweet must somehow be made into bread. That bread looks so nice. And how does a chicken make bread? She was not in the habit of making bread, although of course anyone can make it if he or she follows the recipe with care, and she knew perfectly well that she could do it if necessary. Owie. So after her children were fed and made sweet and fresh for the day, she hunted up the pig, the cats, and the rats, still confident that they would surely help her someday. She sang out, "Who will make the bread?" Alas for the little red hen. Once more her hopes were dashed, for the pig said, "Not I." The cat said, "Not I." And the rat said, "Not I," for the last time. So the little red hen said once more, "I will then," and she did. Feeling that she might have known all the time that she would have to do it all herself, she went and put on a fresh-up apron and spotless cooked cap. First of all, she set the dough as was proper. When it was time, she brought out the molding bread, the board, and the baking tins, molded the bread, divided into loaves, and put them into the oven bake. As all while the cat sat lazily in the and close at hand, the vain rat powdered his nose and admired himself in a mirror in the distance. Could be heard the long-drawn snores of the dozing pig. At last, the great moment arrived. A delicious odor was wafted upon the autumn breeze. Everywhere the barnyard citizens sniffed the air with delight. The red hen ambled her in pickety-peckety way toward the source of all this excitement. Although she appeared to be perfectly calm in reality, she could only with the difficulty restrain an impulse to dance and sing, for she had not done all the work on this beautiful bread. then the chicken will say, "Who will eat the bread now?" And then Small wonder that she was the most excited person in the barnyard. She did not know whether the bread would be fit to eat. But joys of joys, when the lovely brown loaves came out of the oven, they were done to perfection. Then, probably because she had acquired the habit, the red hen called, "Who will eat the bread?" All the animals in the barnyard were watching hungrily and smacking their lips in anticipation. And the pig said, "I will." And the cat said, "I will." And the rat said, "I will." But the little red hen said, "No, you won't. I will." And she did. That's what you get for not helping. Bye! And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.